The pounding on Emma's bedroom door ripped her from sleep like a lightning strike. Her daughter's voice, pitched high with urgency, cut through the morning stillness. "Mommy, Mommy, come quick, please." Emma bolted upright, heart hammering against her ribs. In the 6 years she'd been a mother, she'd learned to distinguish between Lily's ordinary pleas and genuine distress. This was the latter, raw panic that sent Emma stumbling toward the door, yanking it open to find her daughter's tear-streaked face. "Honey, what's wrong?" Emma knelt before Lily, scanning for injuries. "On our porch," Lily gasped between sobs, tugging frantically at Emma's nightgown. "The dog I told you about, Rusty. She's there with—" Lily's words tumbled over each other. "You have to see, please." Emma followed her daughter through their small rental house, bare feet slapping against the cold wooden floors. What she saw through the front window stopped her breath. A thin, ragged German shepherd huddled on their welcome mat, surrounded by tiny, squirming bundles. "My God," Emma whispered, hand flying to her mouth. What had her daughter's simple act of kindness set in motion? And how would it change their already precarious lives forever? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Lily Matthews was a slip of a girl with auburn hair that caught fire in the sunlight and a spray of freckles across her small nose. At 6 years old, she already carried more weight on her narrow shoulders than most children twice her age. Just 8 months ago, her father Daniel had lost his battle with pancreatic cancer, leaving behind a void that neither Lily nor her mother could fill. At Westbrook Elementary, Lily kept to herself, her lunch periods spent alone at the far end of a cafeteria table while other children laughed and played. The whispers followed her. "That's the girl whose daddy died." And though the teachers tried to intervene, children could be cruel in their curiosity. Kindness lived in Lily naturally, like a flame that refused to die despite the winds that buffeted it. She collected fallen birds' nests, returned lost toys, and always shared her cookies with anyone who asked, even those who had teased her moments before. In the evenings, she would sit by her bedroom window, talking softly to the stars, believing her father could hear her. Emma Matthews worked the night shift at Pinecrest Memorial Hospital, her nurse's scrubs often still on when she dropped Lily at school each morning. Dark circles had become permanent fixtures beneath her eyes, souvenirs from endless double shifts and tearful midnight hours spent wondering how to keep their small family afloat. The medical bills from Daniel's treatment had emptied their savings, and the modest life insurance barely covered 6 months of their mortgage. Emma had been forced to sell their family home, moving them to a small rental on the edge of town, where the rent was cheaper, but the neighborhood less familiar. Few knew that behind Emma's confident, caretaking exterior lurked a deep-seated fear of dogs, the result of a childhood attack that had left both physical and emotional scars. The sight of even the gentlest canine could send her heart racing and palms sweating, a secret she kept carefully hidden in her professional life. Rusty was not always called Rusty, nor was she always alone. The female German shepherd, with her intelligent eyes and reddish-brown coat, had once belonged to Harold Winters, an elderly veteran who lived 3 blocks from Westbrook Elementary. For 7 years, Rusty had been Harold's service dog, trained to help with his mobility issues and to alert others if his heart condition worsened. When Harold suffered a severe stroke and was moved to a nursing facility, his son Thomas, living across the country and unaware of Rusty's importance, had simply opened the back gate and shooed her away, unwilling to deal with the complication while settling his father's affairs. For weeks, Rusty had lingered near Harold's empty house, growing thinner as winter approached, her pregnant belly becoming more pronounced even as the rest of her frame wasted away. Something in her canine intelligence knew she needed to find help before her time came. But trust didn't come easily after abandonment. The late October air carried a bite that afternoon as Lily sat alone on the wooden bench outside Westbrook Elementary. Most children had already been picked up, their excited voices and running footsteps fading into the distance as parents whisked them away to warm homes and hot chocolate. Lily huddled deeper into her too-thin jacket, a hand-me-down that had once belonged to a cousin, and watched as Miss Pearson, the kindergarten teacher, paced near the school entrance, occasionally glancing at her watch. Lily knew her mother would be late again. The hospital was always busy, and Emma had texted the school to say an emergency had come up with a patient. It wasn't the first time, and Lily didn't mind waiting. The solitude was actually a relief after what had happened in the cafeteria that day. Ethan Miller and his friends had knocked Lily's lunch tray from her hands, spilling her milk across the floor and sending her sandwich skidding under a table. "Oops," Ethan had said with fake concern while his friend snickered. "Maybe your dad can clean that up." Oh wait, he can't. The cafeteria monitor had missed the incident, and Lily had spent lunch period in the girls' bathroom, crying silently in a stall until the bell rang. Now, her stomach grumbled painfully as she unzipped her backpack and pulled out the sandwich she hadn't eaten, peanut butter and grape jelly on whole wheat, carefully cut into triangles the way her father used to do. Emma had packed it with a note that read, "Love you to the moon and back," in her hurried handwriting. As Lily unwrapped the wax paper, a movement near the chain-link fence caught her eye. At first, she thought it might be a fallen branch moved by the wind. But then she saw them. A pair of amber eyes watching her intently from behind the rusted metal post. The dog was huge, or would have been if properly fed. Even from a distance, Lily could count the ribs protruding from its sides. The German Shepherd's coat, which should have been thick and lustrous, hung in dull patches, and one ear drooped where the other stood tall. Despite its pitiful condition, something dignified remained in the way it held itself, as if remembering better days. "Hi there," Lily whispered, her sandwich forgotten in her lap. The dog's ears perked forward at the sound of her voice, but it made no move to approach. Its gaze dropped to the food in Lily's hands, and she noticed a small trail of drool escaping from its mouth. The hunger in those eyes struck something deep within Lily, a recognition of another soul in pain. Without hesitation, she tore her sandwich in half. "Are you hungry? I bet you are. You look hungry." Lily spoke in the same gentle tone her father had used when coaxing her to take medicine during his sickness. "I'm Lily. It's okay. I won't hurt you." Rising slowly from the bench, sandwich half extended before her like an offering, Lily took one small step toward the fence. The dog flinched, backing away slightly. Lily stopped, then lowered herself to a crouch, making herself smaller, less threatening. "It's peanut butter and jelly. My daddy said it's the perfect sandwich because it's sweet and salty at the same time." She continued talking, her voice a soft, constant stream of reassurance. "I'm waiting for my mom. She's a nurse. She helps people get better when they're sick. I think you might be sick, or just really hungry. That's okay. I get hungry too." After what seemed an eternity of patient waiting, the dog inched forward, nose twitching as it scented the food. When it reached the fence, Lily carefully pushed the sandwich half through a gap in the links. The dog snatched it so quickly, Lily barely saw the movement, retreating several steps before wolfing down what was likely its first real meal in days. The entire half sandwich disappeared in 3 desperate gulps. "You must have been really hungry," Lily murmured, watching as the dog licked its lips, seeking any remaining crumbs. Making a decision, she looked down at her remaining sandwich half. Her stomach protested, but she pushed the feeling aside. "Here, you can have the rest too." This time the dog approached more readily, though still with caution. As it took the second offering, its tail gave a single tentative wag. Something in Lily's chest tightened at this small sign of gratitude. When the dog finished eating, it didn't immediately retreat but instead stood watching Lily through the fence, its gaze somehow less desperate but more questioning. "You're a pretty dog," Lily said, still crouched at fence level. "Your fur is kind of reddish-brown, like rust on Daddy's old truck. Is that why you're out here all alone? Did someone throw you away like an old rusty thing?" She tilted her head, considering. "I think that's what I'll call you, Rusty. Do you like that name?" As if in answer, the dog's tail moved again, a bit more confidently this time. Emboldened, Lily slowly extended her hand through the fence links. Rusty stiffened, but didn't retreat, instead stretching her neck forward to sniff Lily's small fingers. After a tense moment, a warm, rough tongue darted out, licking away the last traces of peanut butter from Lily's hand. "See? We're friends now," Lily beamed, the first genuine smile crossing her face in what felt like forever. The sound of a car horn pierced their moment of connection. Lily turned to see her mother's battered Honda pulling into the school's circular drive, 15 minutes late, and with Emma visibly flustered behind the wheel. When Lily looked back, Rusty had already retreated several paces from the fence, wariness returning to her posture. "I have to go now, but I'll come back tomorrow," Lily promised in a whisper. "And I'll bring you another sandwich. A whole one, just for you." She gathered her backpack and empty wax paper, then added with childish seriousness, "Don't tell anyone, okay? It'll be our secret." As Lily ran to her mother's car, she didn't see Rusty slipping through a gap at the bottom of the fence. Didn't notice the dog watching intently as Emma hugged her daughter before helping her into the back seat. Nor did she see how Rusty, after the car pulled away, began to follow at a distance, limping slightly on her right front paw, driven by some mixture of hunger, instinct, and newfound trust. When Emma turned their car toward the small rental house at the edge of Pinecrest Meadows, Rusty tracked their scent through alleyways and side streets, stopping occasionally to rest her swollen belly. By nightfall, as Lily lay in bed telling her father's star about her new friend, Rusty had found her way to the Matthews neighborhood. There, beneath the wooden porch of an abandoned tool shed 3 houses down, the German Shepherd curled her tired body into as comfortable a position as her pregnancy would allow. Something about the little girl's scent, about the kindness in those small hands, had awakened a long dormant instinct. For the first time since Harold had been taken away in the ambulance, Rusty sensed a possibility of safety. And now, more than ever, she needed to find a safe place, not just for herself, but for what was to come. Emma Matthews had just finished her 3rd consecutive night shift, her body clock thoroughly confused as she collapsed into bed at 7 in the morning. She'd barely closed her eyes when a distant sound penetrated her exhaustion. A strange whining, followed by scratching at their front door. Dismissing it as neighborhood cats or perhaps the wind rattling the loose porch boards, Emma pulled the pillow over her head and willed sleep to return. But the sounds persisted, growing more urgent until they were joined by something else, a low, pained howl that sent a chill down her spine despite her warmth beneath the covers. Fighting against her heavy limbs, Emma checked the bedside clock. 7:42 a.m. Lily wouldn't need to be up for school for another half hour. The scratching came again, more desperate this time. With a groan, Emma swung her feet to the floor and grabbed her robe. Whatever animal had decided to disturb her precious sleep would get a firm shooing away. As she padded down the hallway, the sounds abruptly stopped, replaced by a different noise. A soft, high-pitched mewling that didn't sound like any cat she'd ever heard. Emma hesitated at the front door, suddenly wary. The neighborhood wasn't dangerous, exactly, but it wasn't the safest either. Cautiously, she peered through the peephole. What she saw made her gasp and stumble backward. A large dog lay on their welcome mat, panting heavily, with what appeared to be small, squirming bundles pressed against its belly. Emma's heart raced, her childhood fear flooding back. The snapping teeth, the tearing pain, the hospital stay, the scars still visible on her calf. She backed away from the door, hands trembling. "Mommy?" Lily's sleepy voice came from behind her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, honey, go back to bed," Emma said automatically, her voice higher than normal. But Lily, now fully awake, moved to the window beside the door and peeked through the curtain. Her reaction was instantaneous. "Rusty!" she cried, reaching for the doorknob. "It's my friend from school." Emma intercepted her daughter's hand. "Wait, Lily. What friend? You know that dog?" Lily's eyes were wide with excitement. "She's the dog I told you about yesterday. The one who was hungry. I gave her my sandwich, remember?" She tugged at Emma's robe. "Please, Mommy, we have to help her. She looks sick." Emma vaguely recalled Lily chattering about a stray dog at pickup, but she'd been so exhausted she'd hardly registered the details. Now, seeing the panic in her daughter's eyes, she felt torn between her instinctive fear and Lily's obvious distress. "Lily, stray dogs can be dangerous. They might have diseases or—" "She's not dangerous." Lily's voice rose with determination. "She's my friend, and she needs us. Please, Mommy." Emma took a deep breath and forced herself to look through the peephole again. The German Shepherd was indeed massive, terrifyingly so to Emma's fear-trained eyes, but also clearly in distress. And those bundles, with dawning comprehension, Emma realized what they were. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She's had puppies, right on our doorstep." With trembling fingers, Emma unlocked the door and opened it just enough to see clearly, keeping Lily safely behind her. The dog, Rusty, apparently, raised her head weakly, amber eyes fixing on Emma with what seemed like pleading. 3 tiny puppies, eyes still sealed shut, fumbled blindly against their mother's belly, making soft squeaking sounds. One of them, smaller than the others, seemed to be struggling more than its siblings. "She remembers me," Lily exclaimed, ducking under Emma's arm before she could stop her. Emma's heart leaped to her throat as her daughter knelt beside the massive dog. "Lily, don't." But Emma's warning died in her throat as Rusty simply laid her head back down, allowing Lily to gently touch one of the puppies. There was no growling, no snapping, just exhaustion and what Emma, despite her fear, could recognize as trust. "This little one isn't moving much," Lily said with concern, pointing to the smallest puppy. "And Rusty looks really tired, Mommy. She's shaking." Emma stood frozen in the doorway, a battlefield of emotions raging within her. Her nurse's training assessed the situation clinically. The mother dog was severely dehydrated and malnourished, possibly hemorrhaging post-birth. The smallest puppy showed signs of failing to thrive. Without intervention, both might not survive the day. But her personal terror of dogs warred against her professional instincts. From next door, Emma heard a door open. Mrs. Peterson, their nosy neighbor who had already complained twice about Lily's excessive noise when playing in the backyard, peered over the fence. "Everything all right over there?" she called, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Her gaze fell on the dog and puppies. "Good heavens, is that a German Shepherd? You know those animals aren't allowed in these rentals, Mrs. Matthews. It's in the lease agreement." Emma felt a flash of irritation cut through her fear. "It's not our dog, Mrs. Peterson. It just showed up this morning." "Well, you'd better call animal control right away before it attacks someone," Mrs. Peterson warned, already reaching for her phone. "Those strays carry all sorts of diseases." Lily looked up at Emma, tears welling in her eyes. "Please don't let them take Rusty away," she whispered. "She came to us because she trusted me. She knows I'm her friend." In that moment, seeing her daughter's pleading face, the same expression she'd worn at Daniel's funeral when asking if Daddy might come back someday, something shifted in Emma's heart. For months, Lily had been retreating further into herself, speaking less, smiling rarely. Now, kneeling beside this dog, she looked truly engaged for the first time since Daniel's death. "We're not calling animal control yet," Emma heard herself say firmly, to Mrs. Peterson's obvious disapproval. Then, turning to Lily, "Help me get some old towels from the laundry room, and the plastic storage bin from the garage, quickly." Lily sprang up, hope blazing across her face, and ran to fetch the items. Emma knelt cautiously beside the dog, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to assess her condition. Rusty's eyes followed her movements warily, but without aggression. "I don't know if this is crazy or the right thing to do," Emma murmured. "But my daughter seems to think you're special." She swallowed hard. "And I'm a nurse. I can't just leave you out here to suffer." Mrs. Peterson's disapproving humph carried over the fence as she retreated inside, undoubtedly to call the landlord. Emma knew she might be jeopardizing their housing situation, already precarious with late rent payments twice in the past 6 months. But looking at the struggling puppy and its exhausted mother, she couldn't find it in herself to care about lease violations. Lily returned with an armload of towels and dragged the large plastic bin behind her. Together, they lined the container with the softest towels they could find. The next challenge was moving the dog family inside. "Rusty," Emma said softly, forcing her voice to remain calm despite her racing heart, "we need to get you and your babies inside. It's too cold out here." She reached out a tentative hand, stopping inches from the dog's head. To her amazement, Rusty stretched her neck forward and pressed her nose briefly against Emma's fingers. A gesture of acceptance that brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. With careful movements, Emma lifted each tiny puppy and placed them in the makeshift bed, noting with growing concern how the smallest one barely responded to being handled. Lily stroked Rusty's head reassuringly, murmuring encouragements as the mother dog watched her babies being moved. "Now for you, big girl," Emma said, uncertain how to move the weakened dog. But Rusty, as if understanding, gathered her remaining strength and struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. With Lily on one side and Emma cautiously on the other, they guided the new mother into the house and to the bin where her puppies waited. Once inside, Emma closed the door against the autumn chill and Mrs. Peterson's judgmental stare. She leaned against it, breathing heavily, still hardly believing what she'd just done. In the corner of their small living room, Rusty circled 3 times in the bin before settling beside her puppies, nudging the smallest one closer to her warmth. "Thank you, Mommy," Lily whispered, throwing her arms around Emma's waist. "You saved them." Looking down at her daughter's shining face, Emma felt a curious mixture of dread and something else, something that felt strangely like purpose. Daniel would have brought the dog in without hesitation. He'd always been the brave one, the one who knew the right thing to do instinctively. "We're not keeping them," Emma warned, needing to set boundaries even as she filled a bowl with water and placed it near the bin. "This is just until they're stronger. Then we'll find them proper homes." But as Lily sat cross-legged beside the bin, watching with wonder as Rusty licked her puppies clean, Emma had a sinking feeling that nothing about their lives would be quite the same again. The lines of their carefully confined existence, built to withstand grief and financial hardship, had just been irrevocably crossed. Whether that crossing would lead to disaster or something unexpectedly beautiful remained to be seen. The trip to Pinecrest Veterinary Clinic the following morning was a logistical challenge that Emma hadn't fully anticipated. Transporting a weakened mother dog and 3 puppies required multiple towel-lined laundry baskets, the largest of which could barely contain Rusty's frame. Lily insisted on holding Peanut, the runt, wrapped in her favorite blue baby blanket that had been stored in the attic since her own infancy. Emma had called Dr. Rosenthal's office at dawn, explaining the situation in urgent tones that prompted the receptionist to squeeze them in before regular hours. "I've never had dogs," Emma explained, as she maneuvered her old Honda through early morning traffic, glancing nervously at the rear-view mirror where Lily sat surrounded by makeshift pet carriers. "I don't know what's normal and what's concerning." "Peanut's breathing funny," Lily reported, her small face pinched with worry. "And he's not moving around like Butter and Jelly do." The veterinary clinic was a modest brick building with paw prints stenciled on the windows. Dr. Rosenthal, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and capable hands, greeted them with professional efficiency, quickly assessing the situation. "Let's start with Mom," she said, helping Emma lift Rusty onto the examination table. The German Shepherd remained calm but alert, her eyes never leaving the containers holding her puppies. Dr. Rosenthal's examination was thorough, checking teeth, eyes, ears, pressing gently along Rusty's still swollen abdomen and scanning her for a microchip. The scanner beeped, causing both Emma and Dr. Rosenthal to look up in surprise. "She's chipped," the veterinarian confirmed, noting the number. "We can look up the registration information." A technician took blood samples while Dr. Rosenthal turned her attention to the puppies. Butter and Jelly, 1 male, 1 female, appeared healthy if somewhat underweight, but Peanut, the smallest male, drew her immediate concern. "This little one is struggling," she said, using her stethoscope to listen to his tiny chest. "There's a heart murmur, and his body temperature is too low. He might have what we call fading puppy syndrome, potentially complicated by a congenital heart defect." Lily's lower lip trembled. "Is he going to die?" Dr. Rosenthal's expression softened as she looked at the little girl. "We're going to do everything we can to help him. He'll need special care. Heat support, supplemental feeding, possibly medication for his heart." While the puppies were being examined further by a technician, Dr. Rosenthal pulled up the information from Rusty's microchip on her computer. "Her registered name is actually Athena," she explained, scanning the screen. "She belonged to Harold Winters, a retired military veteran who lived on Oak Street. The chip was registered 7 years ago." "Rusty sounds better than Athena," Lily declared firmly. Dr. Rosenthal smiled. "Well, she seems to respond to either name." Her expression grew more serious as she continued reading. "According to this, she was trained as a service dog for mobility assistance and medical alert through the Veterans Service Dog Program. That explains her excellent behavior despite her circumstances. She looked up at Emma. This isn't just any stray. She's a highly trained service animal worth thousands of dollars. Emma felt her stomach tighten. Does that mean someone will come looking for her? That's what's strange. There's a note in the system from nearly 2 months ago indicating the owner was no longer able to care for the dog, but there's no record of her being surrendered to a shelter or rescue organization. Dr. Rosenthal frowned. It's as if she simply disappeared from the system. The examination concluded with a disturbing assessment. Rusty was approximately 15 pounds underweight, had hookworms, and showed signs of recent mastitis that had fortunately resolved on its own. Peanut required immediate intervention, including subcutaneous fluids, antibiotics, and a feeding tube. The bill, when presented, made Emma's head swim. $847 for initial treatment, with recommendations for follow-up care that would easily double that amount. I can put it on my credit card, Emma said quietly, stepping away from Lily, who was occupied with stroking butter and jelly. But I won't be able to manage ongoing specialized care, especially for Peanut. Is there a rescue organization that could help? Dr. Rosenthal considered this. I work with several rescues, but cases like Peanut's are challenging because of the resources required. Let me make some calls. She paused, then added gently, you should know that even with intervention, his prognosis is guarded. Sometimes the kindest choice with severe congenital defects is euthanasia. Emma felt the word like a physical blow, imagining Lily's devastation. Let's try everything else first, she whispered. On the drive home, with Rusty and the 2 stronger puppies settled in the back seat while Peanut remained at the clinic for intensive care, Emma's mind raced with calculations. Juggling mortgage payments, utility bills, Lily's school expenses, and now these unexpected veterinary costs. The tenuous balance of their financial life had been disrupted, and she saw no clear path to restoring it. Mommy, will Peanut get better at the puppy hospital? Lily asked from the back seat, her voice small. Emma gripped the steering wheel tighter. Dr. Rosenthal's doing everything she can, sweetheart. Can we visit him tomorrow? We'll see. I have work, and you have school. Lily fell silent for a moment. The kids at school won't believe I have 3 puppies now. Even Jason Miller, who has 2 goldfish, will be jealous. The innocent comment struck Emma with sudden force. They didn't have 3 puppies. They didn't have any puppies. Or Rusty either. This was a temporary arrangement born of emergency, not a permanent addition to their family. Sooner or later, she would have to make Lily understand this. As they turned onto their street, Emma noticed Mrs. Peterson standing at her mailbox, watching their approach with narrowed eyes. The elderly neighbor had been increasingly vocal about her disapproval of the large wild animal next door, as she'd taken to calling Rusty. Trouble arriving at 10 o'clock, Emma muttered under her breath, plastering on a polite smile as she parked in their driveway. Those animals still here, I see, Mrs. Peterson called, making no attempt to disguise her displeasure. You know the lease agreement, Mrs. Matthews. No pets over 20 pounds. Good morning to you too, Mrs. Peterson, Emma replied, maintaining her composure as she helped Lily and the dog carriers from the car. We're still working out arrangements. Well, work faster. My Herbert is highly allergic to dog hair, and that beast looks like she sheds enough to stuff a mattress. I've already mentioned it to Mr. Finch. The reference to their landlord sent a spike of anxiety through Emma. Gerald Finch was not known for his flexibility or compassion when it came to lease violations. I understand your concern, Emma said, ushering Lily toward the house. We're doing our best in an unusual situation. Once inside, Emma's phone rang. The hospital calling to ask if she could cover an additional shift that evening. The regular night nurse had called in sick, and they were desperately short-staffed. The extra hours would mean additional pay they sorely needed. But it would also mean leaving Lily alone with the dogs for several hours before Mrs. Abernathy from 3 doors down could come stay with her. I really need you tonight, Emma, Janet, her supervisor, urged. We've got 3 post-ops and a full ward. Emma glanced at Lily, who was already settling on the floor beside Rusty and the puppies, showing them a picture book as if they could understand the story. I'll be there, she said finally, but I can't come in until 7. I need to arrange childcare. That evening marked the beginning of what would become their new routine. Emma working extra shifts whenever possible, Lily spending more time with various neighbors who agreed to look in on her, and Rusty gradually establishing herself as a calm, dignified presence in their home. The German Shepherd displayed impeccable house manners, never chewing furniture or having accidents indoors, reinforcing Dr. Rosenthal's assessment of her formal training. Days stretched into a week, then 2. Peanut remained at the veterinary clinic, his condition stabilizing but not improving significantly. Butter and Jelly thrived, growing plumper and more active each day. Emma established a savings jar specifically for veterinary expenses, dropping in spare change and single bills whenever possible, though the total remained far below what was needed. Lily developed a habit of reading aloud to the puppies each night, sitting cross-legged beside their bed with whatever book she'd brought home from the school library. Rusty would lie nearby, head on paws, watching the proceedings with attentive eyes. These sessions became a fixture of their evenings, and Emma often paused in the doorway, struck by the peaceful tableau they created. It was during one such evening, as Lily read Charlotte's Web with dramatic emphasis on Wilbur's lines, that Emma noticed something unusual. Rusty, typically settled during story time, suddenly stood, ears forward, gaze intensely focused on Lily. The German Shepherd moved toward the little girl, sniffing around her face and hands with uncharacteristic insistence. "What's wrong, girl?" Emma asked, stepping into the room. Rusty ignored her, continuing to nose at Lily, who giggled at the attention. "She's being silly, Mommy. Maybe she doesn't like this story." Emma watched, puzzled by the dog's behavior, as Rusty circled Lily once, then settled directly beside her, pressing against the child's side as if anchoring her. The behavior was odd enough that Emma made a mental note to mention it to Dr. Rosenthal at their next appointment. The appointment, scheduled for Butter and Jelly's vaccinations, revealed yet another financial hurdle. While the puppies were developing normally, the cost of proper veterinary care, vaccinations, deworming, eventual spaying and neutering, stretched far beyond Emma's means. Dr. Rosenthal suggested contacting Rescue Haven, the organization she had initially registered them with, to see if they could assist with placement once the puppies were old enough. "And Rusty?" Emma asked, dreading the answer. Dr. Rosenthal's expression was sympathetic but realistic. Adult German Shepherds, even with her excellent temperament and training, can be harder to place. Most families want puppies, but her service dog background might make her attractive to the right organization. The thought of separating Rusty from her puppies, and from Lily, created a hollow ache in Emma's chest that surprised her. When had the dog transformed from a frightening intrusion to a valued presence in their lives? When had Emma's own fear of dogs begun to recede, replaced by genuine concern for this particular animal? The answer came that very night. Emma had been gradually exposing herself to closer contact with Rusty, moving from fearful distance to cautious coexistence. She still startled when the German Shepherd made sudden movements, still felt her heart race when those amber eyes met hers directly. But the terror that had once paralyzed her had diminished to manageable anxiety. That evening, exhausted from a double shift and worried about an overdue electric bill, Emma sat at the kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed, head in her hands. She didn't hear Rusty approach, and didn't realize the dog was beside her until she felt a gentle pressure against her leg. Looking down, she found Rusty sitting beside her chair, eyes fixed on her face with an expression that seemed almost concerned. "I'm okay, girl," Emma whispered, surprised to find herself addressing the dog directly. Rusty tilted her head slightly, then slowly, deliberately placed one paw on Emma's knee. The gesture was so human in its apparent intent to comfort that Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and stroked the dog's head, feeling the soft fur beneath her fingers for the first time without fear. "What am I going to do with you?" she murmured. "How did you get so tangled up in our lives?" Rusty simply maintained eye contact, her presence somehow both respectful and comforting. In that moment, Emma understood what had drawn Lily to this animal from the beginning. Not just kindness or compassion, but recognition of another soul in need of connection. As October turned to November, the Matthews' precarious situation grew increasingly complex. The landlord, Mr. Finch, had indeed received complaints about the dogs and issued a formal warning. Emma's careful explanation of the circumstances bought them a 30-day grace period, but no more. Peanut continued to require specialized care, draining their limited resources. And Lily, caught in the middle of adult concerns she couldn't fully comprehend, grew increasingly attached to the dogs with each passing day. Yet amidst these mounting pressures, subtle changes were occurring. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Wilson, called Emma one afternoon to report that Lily had spoken up in class for the first time since her father's death, enthusiastically sharing the story of Rusty and the puppies during show and tell. The previously solitary child had begun inviting classmates to visit the puppies after school, resulting in play dates that filled their small house with children's laughter for the first time in nearly a year. Emma, too, found unexpected moments of grace in their new circumstances. The routine of caring for the animals provided structure that had been missing since Daniel's death. The necessity of morning walks with Rusty forced Emma outside at dawn, where she rediscovered the quiet beauty of sunrise that she had once shared with her husband. Most surprising was the gradual dissolution of her lifelong fear, each day bringing small victories as she moved from trembling tolerance to cautious affection for the dignified German Shepherd. Even Mrs. Peterson's rigid disapproval showed signs of softening when Lily, with childish innocence, invited her to meet the puppies one afternoon. The elderly woman had initially refused, citing her husband's allergies, but eventually relented enough to stand at the threshold of their living room, watching as Butter and Jelly tumbled over each other in play. "My Henry had a German Shepherd when he was a boy," she admitted reluctantly. "Named her Lady. That dog followed him everywhere." Something in her pinched expression had momentarily relaxed, revealing glimpses of a younger, less bitter woman. The moment passed quickly, but it left Emma wondering about the layers of loss that might lie beneath her neighbor's harsh exterior. On a particularly cold Tuesday morning in mid-November, Emma received a call from Dr. Rosenthal with unexpected news. A local animal welfare foundation had agreed to cover part of Peanut's medical expenses through their special needs fund, reducing the immediate financial burden significantly. The little puppy, while still undersized, had begun showing improvement, eating without assistance and maintaining his body temperature more consistently. "He's quite the fighter," Dr. Rosenthal said, her voice warm. "I think he might be ready to join his family by the weekend, with some continued special care at home." Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders, only to be replaced immediately by another concern. "That's wonderful, but—" she hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Dr. Rosenthal, we may not be able to keep them much longer. Our landlord has given us notice about the lease violation." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I see. That complicates matters. Let me reach out to some contacts at Rescue Haven. They might be able to expedite the process." The call ended with promises to stay in touch, but Emma felt the walls closing in around their temporary arrangement. That evening, she sat Lily down for a conversation she'd been postponing for weeks. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Rusty and the puppies," she began gently. Lily looked up from her homework, immediately alert. "Is Peanut okay?" "Peanut is doing better. Dr. Rosenthal thinks he might be able to come home soon." Emma took a deep breath. "But honey, you remember how we talked about this being a temporary situation, right? That we're helping Rusty until she and her puppies can find permanent homes?" Lily's face clouded. "But why can't this be their permanent home? They like it here. Rusty likes it here." Emma chose her words carefully. "Our house has rules about pets, Lily. Rules that Mr. Finch makes, and we don't have the money to move somewhere else right now." "But Rusty isn't just a pet," Lily argued with the fierce logic of a child. "She's our friend, and Daddy always said we don't give up on friends when they need us." The invocation of Daniel's values, his unfailing loyalty to those he cared about, struck Emma like a physical blow. What would he have done in this situation? Daniel, who had always found solutions where others saw only problems, who had believed so deeply in doing the right thing even when it was difficult. "I'm trying, sweetheart," Emma whispered, pulling Lily into a hug to hide the tears that threatened. "I'm really trying to figure this out." 3 weeks had passed since Rusty and her puppies arrived on the Matthews' doorstep. The veterinarian, Dr. Rosenthal, had been cautiously optimistic about their chances, though the smallest puppy, whom Lily had named Peanut after the sandwich that started it all, remained worryingly underweight. The adoption process had been formalized through a local rescue organization that Dr. Rosenthal had connected them with, allowing Emma temporary fostering rights while she considered her options. Though Emma had maintained that the arrangement was temporary, the carefully constructed boundaries between human and canine had begun to blur as October turned to November. On a particularly cold Wednesday morning, Emma awoke to find Lily's bed empty. Panic fluttered in her chest until she heard soft whispering from the living room. She found Lily sitting cross-legged beside the dog bed that had replaced the plastic bin, reading aloud from Charlotte's Web, as Rusty and the puppies listened with varying degrees of attention. The sight had become common over the past weeks, but something different caught Emma's eye this time. Peanut, usually lethargic and struggling, was actively crawling toward Lily's voice, his tiny paws pushing with newfound determination. "Look, Mommy," Lily exclaimed when she noticed Emma watching. "Peanut's getting stronger, and I think his eyes are opening more today." Emma knelt beside her daughter, careful to maintain the respectful distance from Rusty that had defined their uneasy truce. Though her paralyzing fear had gradually subsided to wary coexistence, Emma still flinched whenever Rusty made sudden movements. Yet she couldn't deny that the puppies were indeed thriving. Even little Peanut showed improvement, though he remained half the size of his siblings. "That's wonderful, honey," Emma said, glancing at her watch. "But we're running late. You need to get ready for school, and I have to be at the hospital by 9. Lily's face fell. "But today is Peanut's special checkup with Dr. Rosenthal. You promised I could come." Emma sighed, running a hand through her uncombed hair. "Sweetheart, I know I did, but Mrs. Abernathy called in sick and they need me to cover her shift. I'll have to reschedule Peanut's appointment." "But Dr. Rosenthal said it was important." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "What if something happens to him while we're gone?" Before Emma could respond, the phone rang. It was Janet, Emma's supervisor at the hospital, whose tone shifted from professional to frigid when Emma explained she might need to take her daughter to a veterinary appointment. "Emma, this is the 3rd time this month you've had a family emergency," Janet said, making no attempt to hide her skepticism. "I've been accommodating because of your situation, but we're understaffed as it is. If you can't fulfill your scheduled shifts, we'll need to reevaluate your position." The threat hung in the air even after Emma hung up. As a single mother with limited savings and mounting bills, she couldn't afford to lose her job. She knelt before Lily, who had overheard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I have to go to work. Mrs. Peterson will check in on you after school, and I'll take Peanut to the vet tomorrow." "Mrs. Peterson hates Rusty," Lily protested. "She told me yesterday that dogs like that kill people." Emma winced. She'd seen the way Mrs. Peterson glared whenever she passed their house, how she made a point of mentioning the dangerous animals at tenants' meetings. The landlord had already issued a warning about pet violations, only backing down when the rescue organization provided documentation that the arrangement was temporary foster care, not permanent adoption. "Just for a few hours, Lily. I promise I'll be home as soon as my shift ends." The morning proceeded with the usual rush, but an unsettled feeling followed Emma as she dropped Lily at school. Something about her daughter's dejected posture, the way she'd hugged Peanut extra long before leaving, it gnawed at Emma throughout her drive to the hospital. By noon, the feeling had intensified to the point where she found herself checking her phone between patients, half expecting bad news. The call, when it came, wasn't from Lily or Mrs. Peterson, but from Westbrook Elementary's principal, Mr. Hargrove. "Mrs. Matthews, there's been an incident involving Lily," he began, his voice grave. "She appears to have had some kind of seizure during recess. The school nurse is with her now, but we've called an ambulance as a precaution." Emma's world narrowed to a pinpoint of terror. Seizure? Lily's never had seizures. It came on suddenly. She was playing, then collapsed. There was some shaking, and she was unresponsive for about a minute. She's conscious now, but disoriented. The paramedics should be arriving any moment. Emma was already running toward the parking lot, her nurse's badge still swinging from her neck. I'm on my way. Tell her Mom is coming. The 20-minute drive to Westbrook Elementary passed in a blur of red lights and prayer. Emma found Lily on a gurney being loaded into an ambulance, pale and frightened but awake. The paramedics allowed Emma to ride along, their expressions professionally neutral as they monitored Lily's vital signs. Has she ever had seizures before? One asked, attaching electrodes to Lily's chest. Never, Emma replied, clutching her daughter's small hand. She's been perfectly healthy, except for some nightmares since her father died. At Pinecrest Memorial, the same hospital where Emma worked, Lily was admitted to the pediatric ward for observation. Dr. Mendez, the pediatric neurologist, ordered an EEG and blood work, his kind eyes betraying concern behind his professional demeanor. It could be many things, he explained to Emma. Stress, fever, electrolyte imbalance. The tests will tell us more. Hours passed in the sterile hospital room, Lily drifting in and out of exhausted sleep while Emma maintained her vigil. When her phone rang again, Emma almost didn't answer, unwilling to shift her attention from her daughter's pale face. But the number was Mrs. Peterson's, and worry about the puppies compelled her to step into the hallway. Mrs. Matthews? Mrs. Peterson's voice was unusually subdued. I went to check on those animals like you asked, but there's a problem. The little one, the runt, it's not doing well. It's making strange noises and doesn't seem to be moving much. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of too many responsibilities and too few resources. Is it still breathing? For now, but if you ask me, it needs a vet. A pause, then. How's Lily? The question, unexpectedly sympathetic from her usually critical neighbor, nearly undid Emma's composure. They think she had a seizure. They're running tests. Another pause, longer this time. My Henry had epilepsy, Mrs. Nett. Peterson said finally. Started when he was about Lily's age. Scared the daylights out of me the first time. The personal revelation from her normally private neighbor surprised Emma. How did you handle it? One day at a time, Mrs. Peterson answered, her voice softening with memory. He outgrew it eventually. Listen, about the puppy, I can take it to that vet you've been seeing. Just this once, mind you. I'm not getting involved with those animals. Relief and gratitude washed over Emma. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. The clinic's card is on the refrigerator. Dr. Rosenthal knows the situation. After hanging up, Emma returned to Lily's bedside, where Dr. Mendez was reviewing the preliminary test results. His expression was carefully controlled, but Emma had been a nurse long enough to recognize when a doctor was preparing to deliver difficult news. Lily's EEG shows some abnormal electrical activity, he explained gently. Combined with the seizure witnessed at school, I believe we're looking at childhood epilepsy. The diagnosis landed like a physical blow. Epilepsy? Emma repeated, her mind racing through implications, medication, monitoring, medical bills, school accommodations. It's manageable with medication in most cases, Dr. Mendez assured her. Many children lead completely normal lives with proper treatment. We'll start her on a low dose of anticonvulsants and monitor her response. Lily stirred at the sound of their voices, her eyes fluttering open. Mommy, can we go home now? Peanut needs me. Emma stroked her daughter's hair, fighting back tears. Not just yet, sweetheart. The doctors need to make sure you're okay first. But I feel fine now, Lily insisted, attempting to sit up, and I had a dream about Peanut. He was crying for me. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Peterson. At vet now. Puppy in bad shape. Doctor says needs oxygen and fluids. Expensive. Decision needed. The walls seemed to close in around Emma. Her daughter in a hospital bed. A dying puppy that wasn't even technically theirs. A job hanging by a thread. And beneath it all, the crushing weight of being the only one left to make impossible choices. Mrs. Matthews? Dr. Mendez's voice cut through her spiral of panic. Are you all right? Emma forced herself to nod, years of professional composure keeping her upright when she wanted nothing more than to collapse. Just processing. When can Lily be discharged? If her condition remains stable and no further seizures occur, possibly tomorrow morning. We'll need to discuss a treatment plan and follow-up appointments. When the doctor left, Emma sat on the edge of Lily's bed trying to find words to explain epilepsy to a 6-year-old. But Lily's attention had shifted to the window, where dusk was settling over the hospital parking lot. "Mommy, who's taking care of Rusty and the puppies?" she asked suddenly. "Rusty gets scared when it gets dark, and Peanut might be hungry." "Mrs. Peterson is helping," Emma said, deciding to withhold the news about Peanut's condition until she knew more. "She's making sure they're okay." Lily's eyes widened in alarm. "But Mrs. Peterson doesn't like dogs. She calls Rusty a monster. What if she calls the dog police to take them away?" "She won't," Emma assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Mrs. Peterson's unexpected kindness might have limits, especially if Peanut's treatment proved costly. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma's phone rang again. This time, it was Dr. Rosenthal. "Mrs. Matthews, I have your neighbor here with the smallest puppy. He's in critical condition, likely failure to thrive compounded by a congenital heart defect. Without immediate intervention, his prognosis is poor." "What kind of intervention?" Emma asked, stepping into the hallway again. "Supplemental oxygen, IV fluids, possible blood transfusion, and medication to support his heart. Frankly, even with treatment, his chances are maybe 50-50, and the cost would be significant, approximately $2,000 at minimum." The figure might as well have been $2 million. Between the mortgage, utilities, and Daniel's remaining medical bills, Emma's next paycheck was already spent. And now, with Lily's new diagnosis. "I understand it's a difficult decision," Dr. Rosenthal continued into the silence. "Many people would choose to humanely euthanize in this situation. There's no shame in that choice." Emma leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Put down the puppy that had become the center of her daughter's fragile happiness on the same day Lily had been diagnosed with epilepsy? How could she possibly explain that to a child who had already lost so much? "Doctor, Emma's voice cracked. "Can you give me a few hours to figure something out? I'm at the hospital with my daughter. She had a seizure today." "I'm sorry to hear that," Dr. Rosenthal said, genuine concern in her voice. "Yes, we can stabilize him for now, but I'll need your decision by morning." When Emma returned to the room, Lily was sitting up in bed, her small face set with unusual determination. "Something's wrong with Peanut, isn't it?" she asked. "I can feel it, Mommy, just like I could feel that Rusty needed me that day at school." Emma sat beside her daughter, taken aback by the perceptiveness in those young eyes. "Yes, honey, Peanut is very sick. The doctor is doing everything she can." Lily's lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she grabbed Emma's hand with surprising strength. "We can't let him die, Mommy. We just can't. Rusty trusted us to help her babies." "Sweetheart," Emma began carefully, "sometimes, even when we try our very best, we can't fix everything. Remember what we talked about when Daddy got very sick?" "But this is different," Lily insisted. "Daddy was sick for a long time. Peanut's just getting started. And," her voice dropped to a whisper, "I promised Rusty I'd keep her babies safe." Before Emma could formulate a response, Lily's monitors began to beep erratically. Her small body stiffened, eyes rolling back as another seizure took hold. Emma lunged for the call button, screaming for help as her daughter convulsed in her arms. The next hours passed in a nightmare of medical terminology and terrified waiting. When Lily finally stabilized, sedated and sleeping, Emma found herself in the hospital chapel, though she hadn't consciously decided to go there. She hadn't prayed since Daniel's diagnosis, when each desperate plea had gone seemingly unanswered. But now, words formed anyway, directed at Daniel rather than God. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm failing her, Dan. I'm failing everyone." As Emma sat in the dim chapel, her phone vibrated with yet another call, this time from an unknown number. Expecting more bad news, she almost didn't answer. But some instinct made her press the green button. "Mrs. Matthews? This is Officer Brian Taylor with Animal Control. We received a complaint about unlicensed animals at your residence, specifically a German Shepherd and puppies." Emma's heart sank to her stomach. Mrs. Peterson had called the authorities after all. "Who filed the complaint?" she asked, though she already knew. "That information is confidential, ma'am. I'll need to conduct an inspection of the premises and verify whether you have proper documentation for these animals." "My daughter is in the hospital," Emma said, her voice hollow. "And the smallest puppy is at the vet in critical condition. Can this possibly wait?" There was a pause then. "I'm sorry to hear about your daughter. Unfortunately, once a complaint is filed, I'm required to investigate within 24 hours. I can meet you at your residence tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As Emma hung up, the full weight of her situation crashed down upon her. In the span of a single day, everything she'd been juggling had come crashing down. Lily's health, Peanut's survival, Rusty's future, their housing security, and possibly even her job. The careful life she'd constructed after Daniel's death was collapsing like a house of cards. In the sterile hospital hallway, illuminated by fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly, Emma Matthews faced the most difficult crossroads of her life. Every path forward seemed impossible, every choice a potential catastrophe. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered if a simple act of kindness, a little girl sharing her sandwich with a stray dog, could really lead to so much heartbreak. The morning of the animal control inspection dawned gray and frigid, with an early November chill that penetrated the thin walls of the Matthews rental house. Emma had spent the night in a vinyl hospital chair beside Lily's bed, leaving only to speak with Dr. Rosenthal by phone about Peanut's deteriorating condition. The veterinarian had been compassionate but realistic. Without immediate intervention and payment for critical care, the puppy's chances were diminishing by the hour. Now, as Emma unlocked her front door at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before Officer Taylor's scheduled arrival, her body ached with exhaustion and stress. Inside, she found Mrs. Peterson sitting stiffly on the edge of the sofa, maintaining a careful distance from Rusty and the two healthier puppies. The German Shepherd watched Emma with intelligent eyes that seemed to ask a single question. "Where is Lily?" "They've been fed and watered," Mrs. Peterson said by way of greeting, her usual sharpness tempered by what might have been concern. "How's your girl?" Emma set her purse down, fighting the urge to collapse. "Stable for now. They've adjusted her medication, but she had another seizure last night. They want to keep her for observation at least another day." She glanced around the modest living room, noting the scattered dog toys, the blanket-lined crate, the half-empty bag of premium puppy food that had strained her already tight budget. "Thank you for staying with them." Mrs. Peterson stood, smoothing her cardigan with age-spotted hands. "Don't thank me yet. I couldn't stop what's coming." She hesitated, then added, "You should know I wasn't the one who called animal control. That was Richards from next door. Claimed the barking keeps his wife up." A knock at the door prevented Emma from responding. Officer Brian Taylor of Pinecrest Animal Control stood on the porch, clipboard in hand, expression professionally neutral. He was younger than Emma had expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with kind eyes that contrasted with his official uniform. "Mrs. Matthews? I'm Officer Taylor. I'm here about the reported animals." Emma invited him in, watching as his gaze immediately located Rusty and the puppies. The German Shepherd had positioned herself protectively in front of her remaining offspring, her posture alert but not aggressive. "That's the mother?" Officer Taylor asked, making notes on his clipboard. "Yes, that's Rusty. The puppies are Butter and Jelly." Emma managed a weak smile at the names Lily had chosen. "The third puppy, Peanut, is currently at Pinecrest Veterinary Clinic with health complications." Officer Taylor knelt slowly, allowing Rusty to sniff his extended hand. The dog permitted the gesture, but remained wary. "She appears to be a purebred German Shepherd. Do you have any documentation of ownership or adoption?" Emma explained the situation, how Rusty had appeared on their doorstep with newborn puppies, the temporary fostering arrangement through Rescue Haven, and Dr. Rosenthal's involvement. She produced the paperwork the rescue had provided, which Officer Taylor examined carefully. "This is temporary fostering authorization," he noted, "set to expire in 2 weeks. Do you intend to adopt these animals permanently?" The question hung in the air. Emma had been avoiding it for weeks, torn between Lily's growing attachment to the dogs and the practical impossibilities of their situation. "Our lease doesn't allow pets," she admitted, "and with my daughter's medical situation changing, I'm not sure what would be best." Officer Taylor made another note, his expression unreadable. "I understand your daughter is hospitalized?" "Yes, she was diagnosed with epilepsy yesterday." Something in the officer's face softened. "I'm very sorry to hear that. My nephew has epilepsy. It's challenging, but manageable with the right care." He glanced again at Rusty. The issue here is that I've received a formal complaint, and there are several violations I need to address. These animals aren't licensed with the county, which is required even for fostering. The German Shepherd meets the criteria for large breed, which isn't permitted in this residential zone without special permits. Additionally, your housing agreement explicitly prohibits pets. Emma felt the last threads of hope fraying. What does that mean? I'm obligated to issue a compliance notice. You'll have 72 hours to either obtain proper licensing and permits, which would require landlord approval, or surrender the animals to the county shelter. Officer Taylor's professional tone couldn't quite mask the sympathy in his eyes. I wish I had more flexibility here, Mrs. Matthews. The words struck like physical blows. 72 hours. In 3 days, Rusty and the puppies would be taken away, perhaps separated, certainly traumatized, and with no guarantee of finding good homes. Peanut, if he survived, would recover only to enter the shelter system. And Lily, already reeling from her diagnosis, would return home to find her beloved companions gone. What happens to them at the shelter? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Officer Taylor hesitated. They'll be evaluated for health and temperament. Puppies generally have good adoption prospects, though the one with medical issues might be classified as special needs, which sometimes makes placement more difficult. As for the mother, he glanced at Rusty. Adult German Shepherds can be challenging to place, especially those with unknown histories. She would have a mandatory holding period, then become available for adoption if deemed suitable. The clinical assessment failed to capture what Emma knew would be a devastating reality for Rusty. A sensitive, intelligent dog who had already experienced abandonment once, now facing separation from both her puppies and the little girl who had shown her kindness. After Officer Taylor left, compliance notice affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a bone, Lily's purchase from the veterinary clinic's small gift shop, Emma sat beside Rusty on the floor. For the first time, she reached out without hesitation, placing her hand on the dog's warm head. Rusty leaned into the touch, a soft whine escaping her throat. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered. "I don't know how to fix this." The rest of the day passed in a haze of impossible decisions. At the hospital, Lily had stabilized enough to ask about Peanut, her eyes lighting up with hope that Emma couldn't bear to extinguish. She found herself making promises she had no power to keep, assuring her daughter that everything would work out somehow. Dr. Rosenthal called at 3 o'clock with the news Emma had been dreading. Without immediate intensive care, Peanut would not survive the night. The veterinarian had already extended far more credit than hospital policy allowed. "I need your authorization," she said gently, "either for euthanasia or advanced care. I can't keep him in limbo any longer." Emma stepped into the hospital hallway, pressing her forehead against the cool wall. How much would it cost to give him a fighting chance? The real number. With the cardiac medication, oxygen therapy, and round-the-clock nursing for at least 3 days, closer to $3,000. A sum utterly beyond reach. Emma thought of her maxed-out credit cards, the mortgage payment already 15 days late, and now Lily's medical bills that would soon start arriving. "I'll call you back in an hour," she managed, ending the call before tears overtook her. When she returned to Lily's room, her daughter was sitting up in bed, coloring a picture of a German Shepherd surrounded by puppies. The sight broke something in Emma's carefully maintained facade. She excused herself to the bathroom, locked the door, and finally surrendered to the sobs that had been building for days. Later that afternoon, Janet called from the hospital administration office. Her tone was professional, but left no room for negotiation. "Emma, I'm sorry, but we've had to reassign your shifts for the remainder of the week. Given your repeated absences and the coverage issues we're facing, we need to discuss your continued employment when you return. Please schedule a meeting with HR before resuming any clinical duties." The implied threat was clear. After 3 years of dedicated service, often picking up extra shifts and holidays others didn't want, Emma's job was now in jeopardy. Without it, there would be no insurance for Lily's treatments, no income for their basic needs, no possibility of keeping their modest home. As evening fell, Emma signed the paperwork authorizing Peanut's euthanasia. Her vision blurred with tears as the pen scratched against the form. Dr. Rosenthal promised it would be peaceful, that the tiny puppy would feel no pain, that sometimes this was the most compassionate choice. The words offered little comfort as Emma imagined explaining to Lily that the runt she had championed so fiercely was gone. In the growing darkness of the hospital room, watching her daughter sleep fitfully under the influence of anticonvulsant medication, Emma Matthews confronted the complete collapse of her carefully constructed world. Beyond the immediate crises loomed even greater threats. Potential homelessness if they were evicted, unemployment if she lost her position, and the devastating impact on Lily's already fragile emotional state when she learned about Peanut's fate and the impending removal of Rusty and the remaining puppies. The tragedy wasn't a single catastrophic event, but the cruel convergence of many impossible situations, each one alone manageable perhaps, but together forming an inescapable web. Emma had always prided herself on her resilience, on her ability to find solutions where others saw only problems. But now, in the sterile quiet of the pediatric ward, she faced the bitter truth that sometimes love and determination weren't enough. Sometimes the broken pieces couldn't be put back together, no matter how desperately you tried to hold them in place. Emma awoke with a start, her neck stiff from sleeping in the hospital chair. Lily was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling with reassuring regularity. The pediatric ward was quiet, dawn just beginning to lighten the sky outside. Emma checked her phone, 5:47 a.m., and 3 missed calls from Dr. Rosenthal. Her heart sank. She had asked the veterinarian to call regardless of the outcome with Peanut, but now she dreaded hearing the confirmation of what she already assumed had happened. With leaden fingers, Emma dialed the veterinary clinic, surprised when Dr. Rosenthal answered on the first ring despite the early hour. "Mrs. Matthews," the veterinarian said, her voice unexpectedly animated. "I've been trying to reach you all night. Something rather extraordinary has happened with Peanut." Emma braced herself against the wall. "Extraordinary?" "He's stabilized. I've never seen anything quite like it. After you authorized euthanasia, I wanted to run one final test to confirm the heart defect. The results showed something unexpected. The issue wasn't congenital at all, but rather a treatable inflammation of the heart muscle, likely caused by a tick-borne infection." "What does that mean?" Emma asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means we started him on a specific antibiotic protocol immediately, and his response has been remarkable. His vitals improved within hours. He's still critical, but he's fighting, and now he has a real chance." Relief flooded through Emma so intensely her knees nearly buckled. "He's going to live?" "I would never guarantee outcomes in a case this complex," Dr. Rosenthal cautioned, but his prognosis has shifted from terminal to guardedly optimistic. "There's something else, Mrs. Matthews. After you left yesterday, I received a call from Dr. Eleanor Green at the university's veterinary teaching hospital. She's conducting a study on this particular infection in young canines, and she's offered to admit Peanut into her program. All treatment costs would be covered by her research grant." Emma pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob that might wake Lily. That's incredible." "There's a condition," Dr. Rosenthal continued. "Dr. Green's program requires that participating animals remain under observation for a minimum of 3 months, with regular follow-up for a year thereafter. You would need to commit to keeping Peanut during this period." The miraculous reprieve collided with harsh reality, the compliance notice still taped to her refrigerator, the impending animal control deadline. "I don't know if that's possible. We've been ordered to surrender the dogs within 72 hours. "I suspected as much when Officer Taylor called me for verification of your story," Dr. Rosenthal said. "Which brings me to another development. The hospital's board chairman, Dr. Howard Bennett, stopped by late yesterday after hearing about your situation from one of his residents. Apparently, his granddaughter has epilepsy and has benefited tremendously from having a service dog. He asked quite a few questions about Rusty." Emma struggled to connect these scattered pieces of information. "I don't understand." "Emma," Dr. Rosenthal said, using her first name for the first time, "has Rusty displayed any unusual behavior around Lily, particularly before her seizures?" The question triggered a cascade of memories. Rusty's increasing agitation the morning Lily went to school and had her first seizure, The dog's persistent whining when Emma tried to leave for work. The way Rusty had positioned herself beside Lily's bed during recent nights, alert and watchful. "She's been protective," Emma said slowly. "Almost vigilant, especially this past week." "That's what I suspected." Dr. Bennett believes Rusty may have been naturally alerting to changes in Lily before her seizures. Changes too subtle for humans to detect, but within a dog's sensory capabilities. It's not uncommon, particularly in dogs with service training backgrounds. Emma sank into a nearby chair, mind reeling. "Are you suggesting Rusty knew Lily was going to have seizures before they happened?" "It's certainly possible. German Shepherds are one of the breeds most successful at seizure detection when properly trained. And given Rusty's background as a service dog, she may have some existing training that's manifesting in her behavior toward Lily." The implications crystallized slowly in Emma's exhausted mind. "You're saying Rusty could be a service dog for Lily? For her epilepsy?" "With proper certification and training, yes, and service animals are exempt from most housing restrictions and municipal ordinances. Dr. Bennett has offered to connect you with the Assistance Dogs Association. They have a program specifically for families affected by epilepsy." Hope, fragile but undeniable, bloomed in Emma's chest for the first time in days. But pragmatism quickly reasserted itself. The training must be expensive, and we'd still need landlord approval in the interim. "That's where the third piece of news comes in," Dr. Rosenthal said. "I received a rather unexpected visitor yesterday evening, a gentleman named Thomas Winters." The name tugged at Emma's memory. Winters? Harold Winters' son. Apparently, Rusty's microchip registration triggered an automatic notification when we scanned it at her first visit. It took some time to work its way through the system, but Mr. Winters was finally contacted. He came to inquire about Rusty's condition. Emma felt a surge of protectiveness. Thomas Winters, the son who had abandoned Rusty without a second thought when his father went to the nursing home. What did he want? Initially, to reclaim her, Dr. Rosenthal admitted, but his perspective changed significantly when I explained the circumstances, how Rusty found your daughter, how they've bonded, and Lily's medical condition. He was quite moved, actually. "So he's not taking Rusty away?" Emma asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Quite the opposite. He seemed genuinely remorseful about his handling of the situation. He explained that his father didn't die as everyone assumed, but has been in long-term care following a severe stroke. When Mr. Winters Sr. learned that Rusty was alive and had found a new family, he apparently became more responsive than he's been in months." The nursing staff were astonished. Emma found herself struggling to process this avalanche of revelations. "I'm not sure I understand what this means for us." Thomas Winters has signed a formal transfer of ownership for Rusty, legally surrendering any claim to her. Additionally, he's made a rather substantial donation to the Assistance Dogs Association in his father's name, specifically earmarked for Rusty's certification as a seizure alert dog for Lily. And, this might be the most immediate help, he's offered to cover 3 months of rent on a pet-friendly apartment in Heatherwood Heights while you sort out more permanent arrangements. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Why would he do all that? Guilt, perhaps, or an attempt to make amends on behalf of his father, who apparently adored that dog. He mentioned something about Rusty saving his father's life once, alerting neighbors when Mr. Pat Winters Sr. had his first heart attack. The son seemed to feel he'd betrayed both his father and the dog by abandoning her. As dawn light strengthened outside the hospital window, Emma felt the impossible weight of the past weeks shifting, not disappearing but becoming somehow manageable. Peanut fighting for his life with new hope. Rusty potentially finding a formal role as Lily's protector, a temporary solution to their housing crisis. None of it erased the challenges they still faced, but each revelation opened a door where before there had only been walls. At that moment, Lily stirred in the hospital bed, her eyes fluttering open. "Mommy? Is it morning?" "Yes, sweetheart," Emma said, moving to her daughter's side and smoothing back her tangled hair. "And I have some good news about Peanut." Lily's face lit up with hope as Emma explained Peanut's improved condition and the university program in simplified terms a 6-year-old could understand. When she finished, Lily grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "I knew he would get better," she said with absolute conviction. I dreamed about him last night. He was running and playing with butter and jelly. Emma smiled, marveling at her daughter's unwavering faith. There's more good news. Dr. Rosenthal thinks Rusty might be able to help with your seizures. There are special dogs that can tell when seizures are going to happen before they start, and Rusty might be one of them. Lily nodded solemnly. I know. Rusty tried to tell me the day I got sick at school. She didn't want me to leave that morning. She kept pulling on my backpack. The simple statement sent a chill down Emma's spine. Why didn't you tell me, honey? I thought she just wanted me to stay and play, Lily said with a child's logic. But now I think she was trying to protect me, like she protects her puppies. Before Emma could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Mendez entered, accompanied by an older man in a tailored suit whom Emma didn't recognize. Mrs. Matthews, good morning, Dr. Mendez said. This is Dr. Howard Bennett, our hospital board chairman. He's asked to speak with you about Lily's case, if you're comfortable with that. Dr. Bennett stepped forward, extending his hand. Mrs. Matthews, I apologize for the early intrusion. My schedule is rather demanding, and I wanted to meet you before your daughter's discharge planning begins. Emma shook his hand, noting the kindness in his eyes despite his formal demeanor. Dr. Rosenthal mentioned you. Thank you for your interest in our situation. My granddaughter Sophia was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 5, Dr. Bennett explained. Her service dog Max has transformed her life and our families in ways we never imagined possible. When I heard about Lily and her special connection with a German Shepherd, I was intrigued. Even more so when I learned of the dog's background as a trained service animal. As they spoke, Dr. Bennett's phone chimed with a text message. He checked it, then smiled broadly. Well, it seems the pieces are falling into place even faster than anticipated. That was Caroline Banks, director of the Assistance Dogs Association. She's just received Thomas Winter's donation and is expediting Rusty's evaluation process. They can assess her tomorrow if you're agreeable. The conversation continued, taking on an air of orchestrated efficiency that left Emma breathless. Dr. Bennett called in favors with colleagues, made arrangements with social services for temporary assistance, and coordinated with Dr. Mendez to optimize Lily's discharge plan. Within an hour, what had seemed an insurmountable series of obstacles began to resemble a navigable path forward. As Dr. Bennett prepared to leave for his next appointment, he paused at the door. There's one more thing you should know, Mrs. Matthews. Your story, a little girl sharing her sandwich with a stray dog who then brings her puppies to your doorstep, it struck a chord with many of the hospital staff when Dr. Mendez shared it. So much so that they've begun organizing a community fundraiser. A fundraiser? Emma echoed, bewildered. Dr. Bennett smiled. It seems Nurse Matthews has quite a reputation among her colleagues, always the first to volunteer for holiday shifts, consistently going above and beyond for patients. Your supervisor, Janet Calhoun, was particularly vocal once she understood the full situation. She asked me to assure you that your position is secure, and the hospital will work with you to create a more flexible schedule during Lily's treatment adjustment period. As the door closed behind Dr. Bennett, Emma turned to find Lily beaming at her from the hospital bed. See, Mommy? I told you everything would be okay if we helped Rusty. When you help someone who needs it, the help comes back to you. That's what Daddy always said. The simple wisdom in her daughter's words, so reminiscent of Daniel's outlook on life, brought tears to Emma's eyes. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, they would face them together, not alone as Emma had feared, but surrounded by an unexpected community of support that had materialized when they needed it most. Outside the hospital window, the morning sun broke fully through the clouds, bathing Lily's room in golden light. And in that moment, Emma allowed herself to believe that perhaps Daniel had been right all along. That kindness, even in its simplest forms, could indeed ripple outward in ways no one could predict, returning when least expected, but most needed. 3 weeks after Lily's discharge from the hospital, Emma stood before Judge Gloria Martinez in the Pinecrest County Municipal Court, her hands clasped tightly to stop their trembling. The courtroom was unexpectedly crowded for what should have been a routine hearing on an animal control violation. Emma recognized many faces: nurses from the hospital, teachers from Westbrook Elementary, and even Mrs. Peterson, sitting stiffly in the back row beside Dr. Rosenthal. In the matter of Matthews versus Pinecrest County Animal Control, Judge Martinez announced, scanning the documents before her. This hearing will address the exemption request for housing a service animal in a restricted zoning residential area. Officer Taylor sat at the respondent's table, his expression neutral but not unkind. Beside Emma stood Caroline Banks from the Assistance Dogs Association, immaculately dressed and radiating confidence. At Emma's feet lay Rusty, now wearing a bright red service dog vest, her posture alert as she periodically glanced up at Emma for reassurance. "Your Honor," Caroline began when called upon, "we submit that Rusty, formerly registered to Harold Winters and now legally transferred to the Matthews family, qualifies for service animal status under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. The evaluation conducted by our organization confirms that Rusty demonstrates natural seizure-alerting behaviors and has responded successfully to our professional training protocols." Judge Martinez peered over her reading glasses. "I've reviewed the documentation from the Assistance Dogs Association, as well as the medical reports regarding the minor child's condition. Officer Taylor, does Animal Control contest the service animal designation?" Officer Taylor stood. "Your Honor, Animal Control has no objection to the service designation for the adult German Shepherd. Our concern is with the two puppies also residing at the residence, which are not service animals and remain in violation of municipal code." Emma felt her heart sink. Though Peanut remained at the University Veterinary Hospital, gradually gaining strength under Dr. Green's care, Butter and Jelly had been with them these past weeks, bringing joy to Lily during her adjustment to medication and the new routines that came with her diagnosis. "Miss Banks," the judge prompted. "Your Honor, while the puppies do not currently qualify as service animals, we ask the court to consider that they are still nursing and require maternal care. Separating them from Rusty at this stage would be detrimental to their development and potentially distressing to the service animal, compromising her ability to perform her duties for Lily Matthews." Judge Martinez considered this, tapping her pen against the bench. "How old are these puppies now?" 7 weeks, Your Honor," Emma replied when the question was directed to her. "Dr. Rosenthal, our veterinarian, advises that they should remain with their mother until at least 10 weeks of age." The judge made a note. "And what are your long-term plans for these animals, Mrs. Matthews?" Emma took a deep breath, conscious of the weight this answer carried. "Your Honor, we've been offered a pet-friendly apartment in Heatherwood Heights, which we'll be moving to next week. The management there has already approved Rusty as Lily's service dog and granted permission for the puppies on a temporary basis." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "As for the puppies, we've been working with Rescue Haven to find suitable homes for Butter and Jelly once they're weaned. Peanut, the smallest puppy who is currently part of a medical study at the university, will remain with us as a companion animal once he's released. We have permission from Heatherwood Heights for one additional pet beyond the service animal." Judge Martinez nodded, considering the information. "Officer Taylor, given these arrangements, does Animal Control have any remaining concerns?" "Only the matter of the intervening period before the family relocates, Your Honor. The current residence remains in violation of municipal code." "I see." Judge Martinez reviewed her notes once more. "Mrs. Matthews, please approach the bench." Emma moved forward, Rusty staying perfectly at heel beside her. "Mrs. Matthews," the judge said, her voice softening slightly, "I understand these past weeks have been extremely challenging for your family. Your daughter's medical diagnosis, the housing situation, and now these proceedings. Would you like to make any final statement before I render my decision?" Emma hadn't prepared a speech. Looking down at Rusty, then around at the unexpectedly filled courtroom, she found her voice. "Your Honor, 6 weeks ago, my daughter shared her sandwich with a hungry stray dog. That simple act of kindness set in motion events I could never have anticipated. When Rusty showed up on our doorstep with her newborn puppies, I was terrified. I've feared dogs my entire life because of a childhood incident. But watching my daughter with Rusty, seeing the bond that formed between them, I began to understand something my late husband always believed, that compassion creates connections that change us in ways we don't expect. Emma felt tears threatening, but continued. When Lily was diagnosed with epilepsy, our world seemed to fall apart. But Rusty, this dog who came to us because of a simple sandwich, has become her guardian, her early warning system, her companion in navigating a frightening new reality. The puppies have brought laughter back into our home during a time when joy seemed impossible. She gestured toward the courtroom. I never expected this community to rally around us the way they have. The doctors, the nurses, Lily's teachers, even my neighbors. People have shown us kindness I didn't know still existed in this world. I'm standing here today not asking for special treatment, but for the chance to honor the commitments we've made to Lily's health, to Rusty's future as her service dog, and to finding loving homes for the puppies who arrived on our doorstep that morning. The courtroom remained silent when Emma finished. Judge Martinez studied her for a long moment before speaking. In my 15 years on this bench, Mrs. Matthews, I've seen many cases involving animals and municipal codes. Rarely do they involve such extraordinary circumstances. She removed her reading glasses. It is the finding of this court that Rusty qualifies as a service animal under federal law and is thus exempt from the municipal restrictions. Regarding the puppies, I am granting a temporary variance allowing them to remain with their mother until rehoming or relocation occurs, provided this takes place within 30 days. She brought down her gavel. Case dismissed. The tension in Emma's shoulders released so suddenly she felt lightheaded. Caroline squeezed her arm in congratulation as Officer Taylor approached, extending his hand. No hard feelings, Mrs. Matthews, he said. Just doing my job. For what it's worth, I'm glad things worked out. Later that afternoon, Emma drove to Heatherwood Heights with Lily and Rusty to sign the final paperwork for their new apartment. The complex was modest but well-maintained, with a small dog park and playground visible from the second-floor unit that would soon be their home. As the property manager reviewed the lease terms, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside Rusty, whispering secrets into the dog's attentive ear. And you understand the terms of the pet policy, the manager was saying. One service animal exempt from restrictions, plus one additional pet under 40 pounds. The puppies are approved temporarily until rehoming occurs. Yes, we understand, Emma confirmed, signing where indicated. Thank you for accommodating our situation. Outside in the parking lot, they were surprised to find Thomas Winters waiting beside a luxury sedan. Emma had spoken with him several times by phone, but hadn't seen him in person since that first meeting at Dr. Rosenthal's clinic. He straightened as they approached, smiling tentatively. Mrs. Matthews, Lily, he greeted them. I hope I'm not intruding. Dr. Rosenthal mentioned you'd be here today, and I wanted to deliver something personally. From his car, he retrieved a worn leather case, kneeling to be at Lily's eye level. My father wanted you to have these, he said, opening the case to reveal a collection of medals and patches. These are from his military service when he worked with service dogs. He thought Rusty might like having them near her new home. Lily accepted the case with appropriate solemnity. Is your daddy feeling better now? Thomas smiled. He is, thanks to you and Rusty. The nurses say he's more responsive than he's been in months. He's even started physical therapy again. We're visiting him tomorrow, if that's all right with your mother. Emma nodded, moved by the gesture. Of course. I think it would mean a lot to Lily and Rusty both. As they parted ways, Emma felt another piece of the puzzle fall into place. Harold Winters would have a connection to Rusty again, one that honored the years they had spent together while acknowledging her new role in Lily's life. The following Saturday dawned clear and crisp, as perfect weather for the event that had taken on far greater proportions than Emma could have imagined. What had begun as a small fundraiser organized by her hospital colleagues had evolved into Sandwich Day, a community celebration at Pinecrest Park, combining an adoption fair for rescue animals, a fundraiser for the Children's Epilepsy Foundation, and the official graduation ceremony for Rusty's service dog certification. Emma watched from the sidelines as Lily and Rusty demonstrated the alert behaviors they had been practicing with Caroline Banks. Rusty would signal by placing her paw on Lily's leg, then making direct eye contact, a warning that gave Lily time to get to a safe place and Emma time to administer medication if needed. The crowd applauded enthusiastically when Lily placed the official service dog certificate in the scrapbook they had been keeping of their journey. At a neighboring booth, Rescue Haven showcased Butter and Jelly, now old enough for adoption. Emma felt a pang watching the puppies charm potential adopters, but she knew it was for the best. Their apartment would be complete with Rusty and Peanut, who was expected to join them within the month once his treatment protocol was complete. As the afternoon progressed, familiar faces continued to appear. Mrs. Peterson with a batch of homemade dog treats, Officer Taylor with his own rescued Labrador, Dr. Mendez and his family, and dozens of nurses, teachers, and neighbors who had become part of their extended support network. Dr. Rosenthal arrived with news that Peanut's latest tests showed remarkable improvement. He would likely have no long-term effects from his rough start in life. As sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Emma found herself standing beside the memorial bench they had dedicated to Daniel, watching Lily demonstrate to a group of curious children how Rusty responded to her commands. The German Shepherd, once starving and desperate, now stood proud and attentive beside her young handler, the red service vest bright against her healthy coat. "She looks like she was born for this," came a voice beside her. Emma turned to find Dr. Bennett watching the demonstration with approval. "Sometimes I think she was," Emma replied, as if all the broken pieces in both their lives were just waiting to fit together. Dr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. "The universe works in mysterious ways, Mrs. Matthews. One small act of kindness, a sandwich shared with a hungry dog, and look at all that's followed." Emma smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them here. The fear and uncertainty, the moments of deepest despair, and the unexpected salvation that had arrived from the most unlikely sources. In Lily's laughter, in Rusty's devoted gaze, in the community that had rallied around them, she saw Daniel's philosophy vindicated. Kindness, once set in motion, created ripples that could transform lives in ways no one could predict. As dusk settled over Pinecrest Park and the first stars appeared overhead, Emma Matthews felt something she had thought lost forever after Daniel's death. A sense of genuine hope for the future, and the certainty that whatever challenges still lay ahead, they would face them together. A girl, her mother, and the stray dog who had brought unexpected blessings to their door, all because of a simple sandwich shared on a cold autumn day. In a world that often feels divided and challenging, especially as we navigate our golden years, the story of Lily and Rusty reminds us of what truly matters. Like Emma, many of us have faced unexpected hardships, the loss of loved ones, health challenges, and financial uncertainties. Yet this tale speaks to the remarkable power of simple kindness, much like the values our generation was raised to honor. When that little girl shared her sandwich with a hungry dog, she couldn't have known how that small gesture would return to her family tenfold. It reminds us that even in our most difficult moments, the capacity to show compassion remains our greatest strength and often our salvation. As we reflect on our own lives, perhaps we recognize that the most meaningful connections often come when we least expect them, sometimes from the most unlikely sources. The community that rallied around Emma and Lily represents the America we know still exists, one where neighbors help neighbors and strangers become family. May we all remember that it's never too late to share our own sandwich with someone in need, knowing that kindness creates ripples that can transform lives in ways we might never anticipate, but that make all the difference. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.